Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us at today's session on AI literacy in primary contexts. I'm Becky, I'm the Chief Exec of the English Association, and I'm really pleased to be along for this session. A quick word about the English Association. We are a learned society and subject association which was founded in 1906 to promote, support, and celebrate the discipline of English studies. We cover all stages of education, from primary and early years through secondary and further education to higher education and beyond, and we cover all parts of the discipline across language, linguistics, literature, and creative writing. Events like this one are made possible by the fantastic contribution of our volunteer speakers. So thank you ever so much to Patrick for being so generous with your time this afternoon. Our members also make it possible to keep these events free and open to all by paying their membership fees. So if you would like to contribute to the national conversation about English and help support our discipline, please do consider joining us. Membership starts at just £29 for the whole year and enables you to support our events and campaigning work, and you get access to a range of member benefits, including online access to all our journals. Okay, now it is my absolute pleasure to hand over to Patrick, who is a wonderful Year 6 teacher and English lead, and also serves as an editor on the board for our journal English 4 to 11. So it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you, Patrick. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody for joining us. So yes, my name is Patrick or Paddy Carroll. I am a Year 6 teacher in Doncaster, doing about 20 years, so I've got a fair bit of experience. I've done quite a bit of work with the British Council, and it was through the British Council work that I did that I really got interested in using technology. And through those journeys of meeting different people and collaborating with different people online and in person, it allowed me to understand how to use technology, which is why it's great that that's going to be something happening again next year. So very excited about that. As Becky said, I do help with the English 4 to 11 magazine and absolutely enjoy the book awards. And it was lovely last year to meet some of the people at the book awards. And the conference this year, I'm sure, will be as good as last year. But we're talking about AI today. And over the last 2 to 3 years, I have been involved in a number of conversations locally, nationally, internationally regarding the teaching of AI. It's involved working with different organisations. It's involved piloting different materials, creating some of my own materials, and working with head teachers to create policies and classroom resources to support this growing interest in AI and this want to understand what we can do to help support in the classroom. So what I'm going to share today are just a series of stories that I developed after one of them was particularly well liked by staff as a means of introducing a key aspect of AI, which is trusting without questioning. I was asked if I could create some other ones because the story element had landed very well and it allowed different staff to use this simple story from Key Stage 1 through to Year 6 just in different ways. And it allowed conversations between staff to happen as well, because we have to remember that staff are still uncertain and unsure how to approach the teaching of AI. And my plan is to continue this approach. I'm looking to expand the series just because I feel through as I'm learning about AI myself, there are certain elements that can be drip fed in through storytelling. So, for example, sustainability is a key one that doesn't get enough attention, I think, from people. And I think it would be a good way of talk about it with children. And again, as I've said, letting adults understand the impact of sustainability because of AI. As I've said, I've been involved in a lot of meetings with school leaders, and many of them ask questions about AI tools, things like what should we allow, what should we block, how do we stop misuse, and how do we stop children becoming dependent. These questions do absolutely matter, but they come a little bit late in the sequencing. By that time, children are using tools and they're already formed ideas about whether AI can be trusted, whether it's clever than them, whether it's fair. And what I want to really do is slow that process down with these stories. Okay, so before children are told what to do with AI, they're invited to think about, well, what actually is AI? What can it do and what can't it do? And where does human judgment sit within this? Okay, and as we know, stories are the perfect way to explore mistakes safely, examine consequences, and that's what I've tried to do with these. Okay, so this is not stories about AI use. It's about these series of stories about AI understanding. And when I looked at some of the questions that came through as people were booking, uh, they were human concerns about children trusting AI too much, about children losing confidence in their own thinking, about creativity becoming automated, about fairness being assumed instead of being questioned, and about well-being and safeguarding risks. And all that, hopefully, you'll see will come through some of these stories. Okay? Because each of the stories, which I'll share the link at the end, and then you can have these stories to use as you like. Okay? Then it, the stories show how there's a misunderstanding with AI, and there's time to reflect on it through the characters within the stories. As I say, we'll come to those shortly. Um, Something that I really want to get across, though, within these stories as well, is that we also have a character. You can see we've got our little snail here called Slow-Mo the Snail, and he's not just a narrative feature. Okay, he's a deliberate teaching structure because one of the defining characteristics of AI is speed. Right? AI responds instantly. It produces answers immediately, without hesitation. And so children very quickly think if it's fast, it's right. If it's fast, it's good. And therefore it must be correct. Okay. And what this character does is just slows things down, allows children to think about things carefully. Okay. Slow-mo interrupts a pattern and he allows children to pause and think at key moments within the stories. Okay, so we have themes within these stories, and slow-mo just pauses, allows the teacher to bring up key things, allows the teacher to talk to children about what you think is going to happen, what the consequences of what's happened so far, and it allows children to see that just because we're slowing down, it doesn't mean we're wrong. We're allowed to be unsure. It doesn't mean we're not being clever. It means we're taking our time. Okay, so he he shows that you're allowed to think. You're allowed to be a thinking companion. You don't have to rush. You don't have to race. And you do have to question things like AI. Okay. And with slow-mo, children understand that they need to check facts. They need to rethink decisions and they need to look at consequences. So it's that opposite of Pixel, the AI, who's very fast and who will make mistakes. Slow-mo slows it down and shows that you do need, as a human, to think through things carefully. Um, Something else I just want to talk to before I do get to the stories, and honestly, we will do, right? There'll be 5 stories I'll talk you through. I'm going to try and say this word properly, but one of the things we do need to address within AI education is anthropomorphism. I think I got that right. Okay. And that is a tendency to attribute human qualities to non-human things. Okay. And so, for example, um, children will overtrust AI because they're busy talking to it lots. Okay. They'll assume that AI's got human judgment. They confuse the AI as having confidence and they believe that AI should be scrutinized. Okay. Now, do we pretend it doesn't exist or do we teach children how to recognize it and move on? Well, within these stories, we are looking to make sure it's the second part. Okay. Children will anthropomorphize technology, whether we like them to or not. But what we do with these stories is we look at it on the surface, we make it visible, and then we gently dismantle it through the narrative. Okay. But through each of the stories, Pixel, the AI, learns a key lesson. Okay. And the children learn that he doesn't understand secrets. He doesn't know what is true. He doesn't know how to create meaning. Okay, so it allows children to really think about, am I over trusting? Am I assuming understanding? Okay, but let's have a look at the first story. Okay, he says, hoping the slideshow will work. There we go. So this is the first one, and as I've said, this story was based on some of the things that were coming through a number of the resources I was creating and a number of questions from teachers. And this story is about safeguarding and trust. So we've got Pixel in the secret stash, and here we've got Lily. And Lily's very excited because Lily is wanting to create a surprise party for her mum. A surprise party where she's going to get Pixel involved in helping organise things. And the children get very excited about this and thinking, oh, it's great because Lily shares where mum's birthday is. She shares who she wants to invite. She shares what mum likes. She shares where she's going to hide the key so that uh, people can come in for the surprise party. Well, this shows how children do talk to AI and do overshare. They confide in things. They tell it things that um, maybe we shouldn't be doing. Okay. So it's a simple way of just making children reflect on what am I sharing? Because throughout the story, Pixel then starts sharing the secret party. Okay. So mum starts hearing things about it because Pixel doesn't understand what we mean by privacy. Pixel doesn't understand what we mean by danger. Okay. Pixel does store information, but then will happily share it, and that causes problems. So it it's a way of just really talking through with children what should we be sharing? Because I've had many children in my class who will talk about at home how with Alexa, they're talking to their Alexa regularly, and we have to have those conversations with them about what are you telling it? What information are you giving? And so this is a safe way of doing it. Rather than giving the children rules, you take them through the story. We have slow-mo who um, stops, pauses the story, allows you to have a conversation with the children about what's happening. And then at the end, you have slow-mo with some questions for staff to talk through with children about privacy, secrets, danger, right? And the adult in the story is the grown-up who the child will always refer to and always talk to. And the adult, like mum in this story, will explain to Lily, right? Well, Pixel's been sharing all this information which I didn't know about, but you've been telling Pixel all these things. Why could this be dangerous? Why could this be wrong? And then explaining that the AI doesn't understand. Okay, so the adult calmly explains that Pixel um, likes to take information but doesn't know about privacy. Um, so again, we're bringing up safeguarding issues and concerns and that thing about over trusting AI. I'm hoping that makes sense with that first story. Yeah. Uh, but as you can see, it's just a very simple way of bringing in one of the concerns that lots of people have, and you can use it across the curriculum, across the primary school, and it brings out conversations in different ways. Um, and I'll move on to the next story, which is the robot's responses. This was the one which I had initially created for another program, and this is the one which, as I said, people seem to find very useful as a way of um, introducing AI and talking about something which is very, very concerning, which is about misinformation and children not critically reading when information comes from AI. I can remember I had a pupil who was doing some homework. I'd asked this pupil to tell me about the mountain ranges, and each of the pupils were given a mountain range to find out, or a specific mountain to find out about. And this pupil was adamant that K2 was in Birmingham. And K2 was in Birmingham because the AI had told it, right? And he was adamant he wasn't going to tell me otherwise, right? K2 Mountain shop is in Birmingham. You can go there and buy lots of climbing gear, but K2, the mountain definitely isn't. But it was incredible, well, eye-opening, I should say, how trusting this pupil was. And so this story kind of builds on that because it's about truth, misinformation. And we have Leo here. You can see he's using his Braille book because he's been given the task of doing some homework about dinosaurs and finding out um, as much as he can about these magnificent creatures. And he asks Pixel to tell him, and Pixel explains about them having wearing tutus, tells them how they sang opera, they had marshmallow teeth and things like that. And Leo absolutely believes it. And although Pixel is completely wrong, when Dad comes in to talk to Leo about what he's been doing, Dad's very surprised that Leo has taken all this information in. But again, that opens up for lots of questions, okay? And through the story, children see how Dad sits with Leo, they open the book, and they work together using a source material to check the information and recognizing and discussing that Pixel's made mistakes. We can't trust the AI. We've got trust of Dad. We've got the trust of the books to use, and therefore Leo's able to complete the homework properly. Right? There's lots of different, a simple story, but there's lots of discussion that comes through it. Okay, we've got Slow-Mo who slows it down, right? Talks about facts, not fiction. Okay, and it's also really important how it strengthens the fact that an AI will guess, an AI will make predictions, an AI will make mistakes. And so we have to be those critical thinkers. We have to understand the distinction between fact and fiction. We have to be skeptical readers. And we really cannot just trust AI. And that's why I said, I've had lots of teachers recently come to me saying, what AI tool should I be using? And it's like, first of all, you need to talk about the AI understanding with children before they're using tools, okay? Right? But this helps instead of just saying to children, don't believe in AI, the story talks through what could happen. Okay? And this critical thinking is talk through empathy, not through fear, right? And the idea of misinformation can come through. So when I've used it with older pupils, we talk about misinformation, and it allows us to talk about disinformation, right? It's a very simple way of starting the topic, but then we go into deeper discussions. And again, we've just got a series of questions here that just allow the teacher to build on what we've done. And you can see how it progresses from understanding that AI doesn't always keep information to now the fact that we can't trust AI with all facts. We have to use our critical thinking. And a few years ago, everybody talked about the fact that with computing, you needed all your math skills and you needed to be able to do all your coding. But with AI, it is the English skills that you absolutely need because that critical thinking, that reading carefully, that understanding of misinformation and disinformation, that's what has to come through all the stuff that I've been doing. Those messages come through time and time again. It's the English skills that will be needed with people who are using AI. Um, have we got any questions yet, Becky, or should I just carry on? Is there anything?
You're all good to keep going. Yep.
Right, I'll keep going. Right. Um, sorry, so with this next story, we can see that we have got Amira, and she is very excited because there's a school competition, and this school competition is all about art. Amira loves her art, and she wants to create the best piece of art so that she can win the competition. She can win the trophy, and initially she's really excited. Um, but the balloon bursts, and the balloon bursts because as she's having a go, she makes mistakes. As she's having a go, it doesn't quite look right, and she speaks to them about what her idea she wants to do, and she's got this very creative idea. But as she's going along, it's not quite working, and then the AI offers her um, a cheat. It offers her an app to use. And Mary is tempted because the example that is shown is flawless. Okay. And it makes her think about, well, if the AI can do this better, what's the point of my ideas? And it really sits at the heart of making children think about the fact that we need to be able to have our own ideas. We are humans, we are creative, we have got so much within us that we want to share. Okay. We can understand meaning, we can understand emotions, technology can't. Okay. And so even though Pixel does create something technically excellent, visually impressive, it's absolutely hollow. There's no feeling within it. Okay. And so mum then sits with her daughter and they talk about the fact that this may be flawless, but it's not what she wanted to come up with. It's not what represents her humour. It doesn't represent her creativity. And so Emira goes away and she creates her own dragon and she creates it in her own style, recognizing that it feels so much better to create it herself. And it was really important through lots of questions that people have been talking about that we focus on. Yes, we can have things automated, but we don't want to lose our creativity. That's what makes us special. And children need to recognize that technology doesn't have emotions. It doesn't understand like we do. It can predict things, right? It's learned to predict things very well, but it doesn't understand how it's got there, and it will never understand. Well, it doesn't have those feelings that we have linked to the art we create, the music we create, and therefore this story um, really hits home for people about from the experience I've had, from the comments I've had, it really lets children think about letting their own abilities shine. The story ends with her getting a certificate. But she doesn't win, but she does get a certificate for her creativity, right? And again, there's lots that can come through this discussion. So we'll move on to the next one. And again,
Sorry, could I just ask you a question that's come in before we move
yeah,
on? So Jill is asking, sort of how does the story work in the classroom? Do they read it? Is there a script? Or, is it a book? How does it work when you use the story in the classroom?
basically, these are PowerPoints, a series of PowerPoints, five PowerPoints, just of these different stories. And what happens, Jill, is that you'll get at the end there's the link, and you can use them how you want. But what they've been using our school, and they've been using a few other schools, and basically uh, they shared with staff in Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, and Um, you read it through. Um, as you're reading the first bit, then slow mo the snail will stop where something's happened, where there's been a misunderstanding. You have your chat with the children about what's happened, why there's been this misunderstanding, what is the child learning through that, and then it moves on. That tends to be where there's the conversation with the parent that happens about why there's been that misunderstanding and what the AI is doing, what mistake the AI has made, and then at the end there's some discussion questions. And as I said, this is just a way of starting to highlight to children some key areas that keep reappearing and keep being mentioned within the work I'm doing based on AI. But I hope that answers your question. Um, we will move on to the next one because, as I'm sure many of you will have. I have lots of children who come in, and the first thing they want to do in the morning is show me the back of their mouth because they're yawning as wide as possible. Um, my year sixes, they stumble in, and you talk to them, and they have spent a lot of time on screens. They were definitely going to go to bed at the right time, but they just needed to watch something else a bit more, or the autoplay function just carried on and they couldn't quite move away from it. And this story is based on that. We've got our young man, Sam, who is getting ready for bed. And as he's getting into bed, you can see he's got the blue light, he's got the autoplay, and he's watching the endless hours of video because the AI doesn't have a switch off. It just keeps playing on autoplay because it wants to keep his attention. It wants to keep him watching. And whereas we um, definitely need our rest, it can keep functioning and going on and on. He ends up being extremely tired the next day, irritable, um, and he gets called Gumposaurus. He pours juice onto his cereal, and he's out of step because of his loss of concentration, and he definitely feels it by the end of the day. And so again, through a conversation with his dad, he realizes he needs to take the AI and put it downstairs during the night because he needs to get his sleep, or else he's going to feel worse continually. So it's again showing that we do need our rest, we do need our sleep, or else it is going to affect our emotions. And again, it brings out that discussion, the fact that AI doesn't have emotions. AI doesn't feel like we feel. And therefore, we need that rest, we need that sleep. It would be able to keep going, and it doesn't understand why we need that rest and sleep. Again, comments that people have said about it just has made people reflect. It has been, I know it's been used with some parents just to talk about the effect, and um, it was just one of those that I felt would help on this journey. Um, and then this is the last one that I've done, and this one, as you can see, it says teaching Pixel to play fair. As we know, computers, they love data. They love repetition. They love to be given lots and lots of information. But is it fair? No. Okay. It's always, you've got bias and you've got lots of things which it makes assumptions on. And so in this story, over a few days, Pixel has seen that there are certain children who like playing in certain areas, and therefore it makes a rule that if you've got a red shirt, you're going to play in swings. If you've got a blue shirt, you're going to play tag. And even though it likes that pattern, the children don't like that pattern because they're being categorized, they're being pigeonholed, they're being labeled. Well, actually, they like to do more than just one thing. They like to go and make their own choices. There's a young man who likes to sit and draw, where Pixel sees that not as play, whereas Tam wants to sit there and do drawing. It says he needs to go and do something else because it's categorized the fact that play means other things. So it's a way of talking about how AI makes these assumptions, and the way that it doesn't understand choices. It it's been used. I mean, I used it with my class to introduce bias, to introduce the fact that AI will very quickly take information, store information, and then make judgments. And the children were quite shocked at how AI disregards lots of things because it's very much categorized people in certain areas, or it's left people out. And so this story was about representation and fairness and inclusion. And so through the story, the teacher, you can see, sits and talks to the children about why the AI doesn't understand. And these children who have become frustrated, who feel misrepresented, who feel labelled, um, and feel that it's been unfair, uh, they give the Pixel an update and talk through the fact that there are many different games to play, and therefore they should be allowed to play them no matter what they're wearing, um, and that uh, that is the crux of that story. It's about just through a simple idea of playing in games at break time, children should be given their choices. Okay. And they are basically the stories that I've created. Okay. Um, and taken together, they hopefully give a AI literacy spine in terms of helping children understand what I should and shouldn't share, helping children understand that it's important to check the truth, um, recognizing their creativity is important, recognizing how to be healthy, and understanding um, that AI does make judgments and AI does have to be questioned. Um, so quite a few people in the questions earlier were asking about what's my biggest hope and worry about AI. I think we need to make sure that children, adults, I mean, it's been an eye-opening for staff as well, recognize the limitations of AI. As I've said, I keep getting emails from people saying, can you give me this advice about technology we need to use rather than I want to talk to my children about to understand AI. And I just feel this should help you, right? You can see the link is there, and that will take you to the link to the stories. As I've mentioned, I am going to work on one on sustainability just because it's one that's been asked for. Uh, and the reason I've done this is because I've done the research. I feel it's important to ask resources that can be used and that are free, right? I have made some resources previously, um, and it would have been nice that they're available free as well, but I will leave that there, I think, yes. Uh, does that make sense, Becky?
Yes, yes, thank you. Yeah, what really useful tools to use. I especially like that the way you're doing that is very discipline specific through story and narrative, and that those are the skills that we have to be able to genuinely generate creative and original story that AI is just not able to replicate. So yeah, thank you, Paddy. That was wonderful. I will open the floor to questions if anyone has them. I will share the link with you to those stories along with the recording, which will be with you tomorrow morning. But if you have any other questions for Paddy, now is your time while we've got him. But while you're all thinking, perhaps I'll ask you a question, Paddy, while you're here.
Okay.
I was wondering if when we are seeing new children's books being published all the time, it's a very kind of dynamic marketplace for children's literature. Have you seen any sort of books coming out that we can buy that are starting to tackle this relationship that children have with AI? Or is that still something that the marketplace hasn't quite responded to yet?
Um, as you know, I do have a plethora of books. Uh, I I don't think there's some. I haven't seen anything yet. Uh, Again, we're very lucky with links with the English Association where we do get to get advice through the book reviews on lots and lots of books. I've not seen anything yet. Hopefully, there will be things coming, um, because it is something which does need tackling. And I have done previous work with groups where we have created slideshows for children. But as I said, if you're just giving them rules, it's not having that same depth of conversation as a story. So I've not seen anything yet, but obviously, hopefully there will be things coming soon. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's hope in the English 4 to 11 Picture Book Awards, maybe next year we'll have something to
Yes.
celebrate that tackles this very question. Yeah. Well, I can't see anything that's come through on the chat, in which case we can draw today's session to a close. But you can see Paddy's email on the slide there, and I'm sure he'll be very happy to hear from you if you come up with anything after we've finished. So thank you very much. You will
Going to
find the
the English
recording.
Association conference. I'll be there. So yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Paddy. Yes, the English Association Conference is on Saturday, the 13th of June in central London, where we will be celebrating the best children's picture books that were published last year. So do join us for more children's literature things and all things English. For now, I will say thank you to all of you for joining us this afternoon. It's been a real pleasure. Yes, Gail, thank you. Enjoy the sunshine while it's here. And thank you also to Paddy for being so incredibly generous with giving us all these stories and for sharing your time with us. So have a lovely evening, everybody. Thank you.
Very much.